Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're tracing the insane high-stakes history of a company that has completely reshaped our modern world. Believe it or not, this massive empire wasn't hatched in some pristine corporate boardroom. Actually, it was born over cheap coffee at a diner back in 1992 by Jensen Huang. We're going to look at how a series of totally wild decisions transformed that casual diner conversation into literally one of the most dominant forces in technology. To put the sheer scale of this success into perspective, just take a look at this number, $20 million. That is exactly how much NVIDIA makes every single hour today. It's wild. 34 years after that initial coffee meeting, they've completely taken over the gaming industry, the entire AI space, and even the algorithms running on the apps on your phone right this second.
But here's what's truly fascinating. This empire wasn't built on safe, carefully calculated corporate strategy. As you'll see, it was a gamble nobody believed in. In fact, it was built on a series of near-fatal bets that defied all conventional logic. And to really understand how NVIDIA conquered the world, we have to start at the very beginning, back when the odds were completely stacked against them.
Section 1. Starting from zero.
So before he was a tech titan, Jensen learned pure survival at a really harsh boarding school in Kentucky. And honestly, that was a skill he desperately needed when he up and quit his stable job to build a 3D graphics chip for a market that barely even existed yet. That leads us right to their first massive failure. NVIDIA spent 2 solid years and literally every single dollar they had building their first product, the NV1. It was designed specifically to render curved 3D surfaces. But right as they launched, Microsoft published its DirectX standard, dictating the games were going to be built using flat triangles instead. So NVIDIA was going in the exact opposite direction of the entire industry. They built the totally wrong chip, but with tremendous confidence.
Section 2. The Sega Lifeline.
Facing total collapse with a massive flop of a chip, NVIDIA clung to a single lifeline. They had a contract to build a graphics processor for Sega's upcoming next-generation console, the Dreamcast. This was real money, you guys, and a real chance to start over. But there was a massive catch. Sega's design used that exact same dead-end curved surface technology. Jensen quickly realized that finishing the contract meant building something he already knew was dead on arrival. So he flew to Japan and did the unthinkable. He told Sega to cancel their contract because it was a total waste of their money. But then he made a $5 million plea. He basically asked Sega to let him keep the remaining $5 million on the contract as an investment in NVIDIA. He flat out admitted he had nothing to offer and the money would likely be lost. But if Sega didn't agree, NVIDIA would vaporize overnight.
Jensen bowed, got on a plane, and just waited. The agonizing anxiety of waiting for Sega's answer while staring out over the Pacific Ocean was completely overwhelming. He was trapped in this awful loop of panic, at least until he got a profound reframe from his therapist, who asked him this exact question. Are you solving something, or are you rehearsing a disaster? Wow, right? Just having a name for that anxiety broke the loop, shifting his mindset from pure panic back to laser focus.
Well, Sega inexplicably said yes, mostly just because their CEO really liked Jensen. That $5 million bought them exactly enough time to try again. They rebuilt their chip entirely from scratch, this time making sure it was DirectX compatible with those flat triangles. They called it the Riva 128. Now get this, they had exactly 1 month of payroll left in the bank to find out if it actually worked. And it absolutely did. They went from the literal brink of bankruptcy to selling 1 million units in just 4 months.
Section 3. Inventing the GPU.
Most CEOs probably would have taken a long vacation after a near-death experience like that, but Jensen just walked right up to the whiteboard and wrote one word: more. By 1999, they launched the GeForce 256 and actually coined the term GPU. Gamers absolutely loved it and revenue exploded. To understand why this changed everything, think of it like this. A standard CPU is kind of like one very smart employee doing complex tasks extremely fast, but they have to do them one by one. A GPU, on the other hand, is like having 10,000 interns crushing tiny, simple calculations all at the exact same time.
Section 4. The $500 million bet. It turns out, Jensen realized those 10,000 virtual interns could do far more than just render video games. If a problem could be broken down into thousands of small calculations, well, they could simulate weather, molecules, or even train machines to think. So, in 2006, he launched CUDA. This was a software platform for scientists to use NVIDIA GPUs for general computing. He gambled roughly $500 million building the thing, and by 2008, it was generating absolutely zero revenue.
Nothing. People told him he was literally just subsidizing a hobby for PhD students. But Jensen strongly believed that when those students finally built something important, it was going to run on NVIDIA. He waited for 6 agonizing years before it finally paid off.
Section 5. The AI Breakthrough.
The ultimate validation for that massive bet arrived in 2012 at a global AI competition in Toronto called ImageNet. Researchers showed up with a radically different approach. They were using NVIDIA gaming cards to power a neural network called AlexNet, essentially letting the machine learn visual features all by itself. Second place went to a traditional hand-coded approach with a 26.2% error rate, but AlexNet, it hit 15.3%. That wasn't just a win. The industry viewed it as an absolute murder scene that changed computing forever. Training neural networks required millions of simultaneous calculations, which was exactly what NVIDIA had been quietly perfecting for 6 years.
Section 6. A $3 trillion war. Almost overnight, giants like Google, Meta, and Microsoft realized they didn't just need graphics cards anymore. They desperately needed NVIDIA to power artificial intelligence itself. But here was the problem. NVIDIA didn't actually own the fundamental underlying architecture. That belonged to a company called ARM. So to secure their future, Jensen offered $40 billion to buy ARM outright. However, the prospect of NVIDIA controlling the DNA of virtually every smartphone and server on Earth completely terrified their competitors. Regulators across the globe actually united to block the deal completely, forcing NVIDIA to just walk away.
Then, the geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically. Washington stepped in, ruling that NVIDIA's advanced H100 AI chips could no longer be exported to China. Cut off from major customers, NVIDIA scrambled and engineered a weaker version, the H800, specifically designed to comply with these new rules. But shortly after that, Washington tightened the restrictions again, blocking the H800 as well. So NVIDIA was now officially a strategic asset in a global technology tug-of-war, forced to constantly re-engineer their chips just to navigate these really severe export restrictions.
It's honestly crazy to think about, but while the geopolitical regulations got messier and way more complicated, the absolute frenzy for computing power just outpaced everything. The sheer demand from giants like OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic for next-generation hardware, like NVIDIA's Blackwell chip, was entirely unprecedented. Customers were literally ordering the chips before the factories could even finish making them.
By October 2025, this relentless, insatiable demand catapulted NVIDIA's market value past $5 trillion. $5 trillion! They surpassed Apple, they surpassed Google. This company, which once had exactly 30 days of cash left in the bank and bet their entire existence on a totally wrong chip, somehow became the most valuable company on planet Earth. Every single bet looked completely insane from the outside, and every single one paid off.
It all really comes back to a mindset that Jensen himself articulated. My will to survive exceeds everybody else's will to kill me. From a harsh boarding school to a near-fatal Sega contract to betting $500 million on a hobby for PhD students. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. How will this unprecedented, relentless survival instinct shape the future of AI, now that the global stakes have quite literally never been higher?